Tony Gurley is running for the GOP nomination for Lieutenant Governor here in campaign 2012. We talk about his campaign and the issues facing North Carolina next on North Carolina Now.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Tony Gurley is a Wake County Commissioner who's thrown his hat in the ring for the Lieutenant Gubernatorial nomination in the Republican Party. Mr. Gurley, thanks for being on North Carolina Now.
Thank you for inviting me.
I saw some early polls, early March polls, 9%, 7% for your two competitors, 6% for Tony Gurley, and about 70% undecided.
Right.
What do primary voters need to know about you?
Well, they need to know that I have been an elected official for the past 10 years on the Wake County Board of Commissioners. And as I tell everybody, that if you want to understand and know what a candidate's going to do in the future, look at what they've done in the past. And that's what I'm running on, is my record for the past 10 years and taking that forward to the state level.
How would you portray your record, obviously in glowing terms, but what have you done for Wake County in your service since 2002?
Well, one of the things that we've done is to promote transparency. We were the first local government in the United States to put our entire county budget online so that every citizen in Wake County can see our budget, drill down on each line and see where the checks are written, what they're paying for, and who they're going to. That was the first local government to do it, and we've received national awards for being the most transparent local government in the country.
Are you suggesting the state government needs to allow the citizens to be able to point and click and see where everyone's spending money?
I'm suggesting that it's not available now, and that yes, the state should be as transparent as Wake County is.
Is that realistic in this climate? Do you think you can convince first the Senate and much less the House to go along with such scrutiny of every single line item in the state budget in terms of an expenditure? Because you can see the state budget law right now if you want to look it up.
Yes, I do believe that a majority of members of both branches, of both houses, would be in favor of that.
Why do you pick transparency? I watched your speech in McDowell County. I watched your speech, it's been a year ago, Johnston County.
Home county is McDowell County. Yep.
And, but you bring that up almost right at the top of your speech. We need more transparency. So what's wrong on Jones Street right now with the legislature? Is it that closed off to the public?
Well, it has changed in the past year. I believe that the legislature has become more transparent in the past year. With the new Republican majority that came aboard, I believe there is a move more toward transparency. The real driving force behind that, though, is I believe every citizen that pays $1 of tax money to the government has the right to know where that money's being spent.
Now, why is it time right now to consider shifting away from urban or county politics to move to the state stage? You being a small businessman who's proud of the fact you run a business.
Absolutely.
Why make that transition? Because the lieutenant governor's job might soak up quite a few hours of your week.
It might soak up a lot more than a few hours, but I really believe that state government has begun to change, and it's begun to change for the good. We still need to change the executive branch, the governor and the lieutenant governor, and get them on board with what's happening in the legislature. That's really what's given me the incentive to do this. The position of lieutenant governor is very unique in that you're part of the time in the executive branch and part of the time in the legislative branch, and you have free time that you could spend promoting projects that benefit all the citizens of North Carolina. I want to use that time working with a pro-business governor to become the champion of small business for North Carolina. A lieutenant governor position would be perfect for that.
I see a lot of bills come through here regarding business, small business, large business, lots of incentives. On the baseline, how do you view a small business? What is that?
A small business, in my definition, is a company that's 500 employees or less. Small businesses are the backbone of the economy, and 80% of all new jobs are coming to companies with 500 employees or less. And good times or bad times, those are the businesses that keep our smaller communities stable and allow us to get out of the recession that we're in now.
I've interviewed a couple of conservative or Republican candidates, and there's a mixed bag on the records versus voting for incentives to help a company come in versus a philosophy that says, it's time to level the playing field and not do incentives, find other ways of doing it. Where do you fall on that?
Well, the state has a program of incentives. Part of their program is that local governments must participate in order for the state incentives to be given out. What we've done in Wake County is set up a grant program that's basically a discount on property taxes, so that if a company puts over $100 million of assets on the ground and pays property taxes on it, they can get a discount on the property taxes that they pay. That allows those companies that want to come to Wake County to receive the state incentives. And we've been very successful in that. We've added several thousand jobs over the past 10 years. The best world would be to not have any incentives for specific companies and to level the playing field for everyone.
Is that even realistic?
It would be realistic with a national law that says incentives by local and state governments are illegal. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And since it hasn't happened yet, the local governments need to be fiscally responsible and have a program that benefits their citizens the most. And I have not seen an incentive program yet that pays companies to bring jobs to an area to be economically feasible.
So in other words, when you hear people on the stump giving these kinds of speeches of getting rid of incentives, you're saying that may not be as realistic as you may think it would be.
Oh, definitely not.
Now, as you move from county politics, which is a huge county, Wake County, up to the state level, what are the differences, nuanced and not, between running a county of a few million people versus running a state of several million people?
Well, the beauty of counties in North Carolina is that you are a creation of the state legislature. Everything that we do at the county level is to benefit the state legislature. So it's not like we're completely separate anyway. We work very closely with the state, and in fact, I've had many state legislators say that they would have voted differently on an item had they known its impact on county governments or even the municipal governments. So even though we are different governments, we still work closely together. Counties provide those services that are necessary. The education, public safety, and human services, those are all the same services that the state is providing as well. So I don't look at us as being that different. We're really partners in trying to provide the services that citizens need.
But how do you handle that situation where if you're talking to a lawmaker and they say, well, we didn't know how it would impact the local government? People think they elect a state representative to represent the local scene. So what kind of conversation, how does that play out? Because you could be in a position where you're bridging a gap.
Well, there's certain issues, for example, where the state was requiring the counties to pay for Medicaid. We were the only state in the country that counties paid a percentage, 5% of all the Medicaid. I mean, a lot of counties, that 5% they were paying toward Medicaid expenses was more than they were contributing toward public education. And so the state had promised all along to take that full responsibility on themselves like all the other states did. And so it required working together and explaining to the state legislators, if you don't do this, this is the impact it's having on education and human services and public safety. And we were able to convince them that it was the right thing to do, and several years ago they did.
All right, one plank down, the transparent state government, you would support that using the bully pulpit of the Lieutenant Governor's office. You've told us about the link between county and local, what your experience can bring. Let's dive into the state government, where you've had to have studied what's going on down here. What needs fixing? Set aside the platitudes for the legislative leadership. You have to do that as a Republican. That's what you're going to do.
Absolutely.
But what still needs changing in Raleigh?
Well, it's budget. Budgetary issues are going to be at the forefront for the next few years. We have had a state government that spent money that it did not have and has caused budgetary issues to come to the forefront. We've got to continue focusing on those key services that must be provided and not take more money out of the pockets of citizens. So we shouldn't be raising taxes. We should be prioritizing our spending at the state level to provide services that the citizens expect and that they need, and it's going to take painful decisions, just like this past year.
Is there still a spending problem? The Republicans balance the state budget in line with the Constitution. They've sunsetted a sales tax. Balanced budget is a balanced budget.
Right, but there are still fine-tuning that needs to be done, and Speaker Tillis will tell you that that was just a first step. I mean, we've been going down this path for decades. One session of fiscal responsibility doesn't overturn the past decades. So there's still going to be a lot of work, and something that the citizens of Wake County and the statewide expect the legislature to do.
Go deeper. What programs do you see out there that you would sit down with your legislative leaders and say, you know what, I can support you out there on the public square if you go for these sorts of cuts and reductions? Where do you see specifically?
Well, and again, it's prioritizing the spending. It's not necessarily cuts.
Okay, prioritize the spending.
Okay, the prioritizing the spending, first you start with education. Public K-12 education is one of the few services provided by state government that everyone seems to want to rank just based on the number of dollars that are paid into the system. We need to be getting better results for the dollars that we are putting into public education. A great step was removing the cap on charter schools, which requires fewer tax dollars and yet will improve the education of our students. Those are the type things that we need to focus on, is where can we spend the same amount or even less and get better results. I am confident that we can get better results in public education with the same or even less money.
What results would you like to see? There's all sorts of criteria you can use to define a successful teacher, a successful school, or a school system.
Yep.
What does your experience tell you? What can be done here?
Well, the state's role should be to set goals for local school districts. The local school districts should have much more control over how they spend the money that comes from the state and from the counties. I mean, the county supplements to school systems gives them some flexibility to do things that they're not able to do with state money. They need more flexibility with the state money as well. But if you can just allow these local districts to have more flexibility and a little more autonomy in how they spend that money, you'll get better results. Now, I'm not saying that the state shouldn't be involved some, because you've got to set common goals and criteria that they're going to be judged on, but give them more flexibility to do what they know needs to be done in their community.
So not more funding, but more flexibility. Ever a case when you would increase school funding?
If it was shown that the funding was not sufficient to achieve the results that we want to achieve, yes.
So transparency, we've got education out there now. What else is on the Gurley agenda?
Well, and to go back to the education as well, I mean, because you also have to look at the facilities that are there. Okay. And here in Wake County, we passed the largest bond for building schools in North Carolina. We did that in 2006. So I was just wanting to go back to make sure that when do you spend more money? Well, when your facilities aren't adequate to house the students, you spend more money, and we passed a $970 million school bond to provide those facilities. So I guess our education spending in Wake County has probably gone up even more than any other county.
What do you make of state sessions of this legislature in years past passing bonds without voter approval, because the Wake County school bonds were voted on by the voters?
Absolutely, they were voted on by the voters.
Is it okay if you need to get the job done to go ahead and push through a bond without voter approval?
I think all bonds spending public money should be voter approved.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
Well, if the only condition I would put on that is that if it requires a tax increase to build the structure, it should require a vote of the public. Now, here in Wake County, we are building a new courthouse, and we are doing that with no increase in taxes to the public, even though it's a $200 million project with the courthouse and the detention facilities. But that's something we started planning 8 years ago, and we were able to do it without a tax increase to the public. Whereas the city of Raleigh ran into a lot of issues trying to raise taxes to build a public safety center. So I guess the if, and but would be, if you're able to do this without raising taxes, you don't really go to the public to vote on a courthouse.
I was hearing you speak, and you were telling a crowd that Lieutenant Governor Dalton and Governor Perdue, the administration, not the legislature, but the administration of the governor, has been impeding the economic recovery. Now, granted, this was back in March 2011 you made these comments. If you will go into office in January of 2013. Still the same game plan? Is the economic recovery being impeded? Has the new state budget not had time to have any effect? How do you view the big landscape here?
No, I do believe state government is impeding economic growth still. And one of the examples that I look to is the example we've had here in Wake County with Red Hat. Red Hat is a homegrown company. It started here. It was expanding, looking to move out or expand here. It was not economic incentives that kept them here. It wasn't the business grant that we have in Wake County for a discount on property taxes. It was Red Hat going to the Department of Commerce and the governor's office to become exempt from a lot of the red tape and the bureaucratic impediments that are in place in state government. And to Governor Perdue's credit, she was able to remove all those impediments, and they decided to stay here. The problem is that was only done for Red Hat. If you're a competitor to Red Hat, you still have the state government treating your product differently than Georgia or Texas. The tax law, the tax structure in North Carolina hasn't been revised in decades, and it was treating their company differently, and they were going to move. Well, we were able to keep them, but all companies should be given that benefit. You shouldn't have to threaten to leave the state to be treated fairly. We need to treat all businesses fairly.
How easy will it be to convince your colleagues, if you're elected, to follow this path of a level playing field, because each business is unique? They'll all say they have unique challenges, and some will say, if you don't give it to us, we're out of here.
But they're saying that now as well. We need to treat the companies that are here as well as we treat the ones that are promising to move here. So it's not just, it's treating all companies the same, whether they're moving in or whether they're existing companies. And it's a matter of fairness, but it's also a matter of stimulating the economic growth. Government has no right to be picking winners and losers as far as private businesses. And so we need to let the economy decide that and reap the benefits of stepping back sometimes.
We've talked money and budget most of this interview with just a few minutes left, but I have asked every candidate so far. You see different brands of conservatives, or at least they're branded by others as being fiscal or social. Where do you balance? Are you more of a fiscal conservative, or are you a 50-50 social conservative, or do social issues drive you when you really talk about putting your life out there and serving?
I think I'm a conservative, both fiscally and socially. I mean, we have, the economic issues we talked about. We've balanced our budget here. Our tax rate's lower than most of our other state counties. So, I've proven that. The social conservatism, we're passing a resolution supporting the legislature's voter ID. I think that, you should have a photo ID in order to vote. You have to have a photo ID to visit the governor in the governor's mansion. Should have one to be able to vote for governor as well.
If elected, you being a big county, a large population county, there's a lot of small counties out there with challenges that Wake County doesn't have to deal with. How do you get down to that level, and how do you keep your focus on the small guy when you've never had to focus on a small guy?
Well, I've focused on the small guy all along. I mean, Wake County is just made up of 960,000 small guys. I mean, just the fact that there's so many living here in Wake County and makes Wake County more significant, I guess, based on population. But I'm from McDowell County, Marion. I mean, I grew up in a small town. I've been a small business owner my entire life. I've raced cars for 12 years and felt like I was the underdog in that as well. So I don't look at this as urban versus rural or big versus small. Everybody has a vote, everybody has an interest in what happens in state government, and everybody has the right to see where their money goes and have their influence heard.
This is Tony Gurley. He is running for the Republican nomination for Lieutenant Governor in North Carolina. Mr. Gurley, thanks for being on North Carolina Now.
Okay, thank you.
And I will tell you that we are inviting all the major candidates for this office to come on this program and give us an interview as we book them and as we air them. We hope you will stay tuned, enjoy, and learn. Thank you so much for watching this episode tonight. We'll see you next time.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.